Welcome back to a Gentleman's Review, bringing you the news that the mainstream propaganda doesn't give you. I'm Art Hampton, and with me this time for part two is Dave Giordano, the Northeastern Executive Director of the John Birch Society. Now, last time we talked about the UN, the CFR, UNESCO, World Heritage Sites, all these organizations pushing for a one world government, kind of laid the groundwork to what's going on leading up to this point. And now I think we get into the meat of the conversation of what is the backup plan if Trump doesn't get in the White House. So tell us, Dave.
Well, the founding fathers never wanted all this power in one branch, the executive branch. They wanted the power, spread across several branches, but actually not even evenly. Power is in the House of Representatives. If you open your Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, very first line, all legislative power is granted to the House. Yeah. What's all mean? Does it mean 99.9%? No. I had a coordinator that was out up in North Jersey at a street fair, and he said some kids came up, teenagers, and they were talking about the Constitution. They said, we don't learn about this. And he pointed that out, and they said, we didn't know that. We didn't know that fact that all legislation originates in the House of Representatives. Well, let me tell you, most adults don't. So, and then what else originates from there? The revenue. So
power of the purse.
The power of the purse. So all the revenue and all the legislation originates from the House. That doesn't get any more powerful than that. And the founders put them in a House that doesn't have a 6-year term like the Senate or a 4-year term like the president, but they have 2-year terms. And they're in small districts, and you can affect those people. So this presentation is for everyone, but I kind of targeted the people supporting Trump. And I want a friend in the White House. He seems to be a friend. When you're systematically pulling us out of the United Nations, it's one of the best things you can do.
Yes.
So I said, but many of you are tirelessly walking door to door to campaign for him. Imagine if you did that in your own congressional district. If Kamala Harris does get in the White House for whatever reason, if we have a constitutional House of Representatives, she can't do anything.
Yes.
She can't write legislation. She can't. I don't want to hear about executive orders. With the Constitutional Congress, we'll shut that down because there's nothing in the Constitution about executive orders. Oh, there is executive orders. I believe there's the president can execute an executive order, says like all government employees have off next week. But it doesn't apply to the citizens of the United States. There's nothing in the Constitution. So if we have a constitutional Congress, she can do nothing. So that's part of the backup plan. And then if Trump does get in office and he continues with some of the good things that I mentioned, he's also going to need a constitutional Congress to help him. And then the final reason, the third reason we need that constitutional Congress is if he does do something like, the USMCA or something that violates the Constitution, and he makes a mistake, the constitutional Congress could say, no, you're wrong there. You're doing a great job. This time you're wrong.
Didn't they do that with bump stocks when he signed away bump stocks and they overturned it?
It's a good example. And there was an example that I can't remember what the issue was. Maybe you can remember. He did something and Thomas Massie corrected him. And he attacked Thomas Massie. And it turned out Thomas Massie was right. I think Thomas Massie said, if you can do that, then the next president can do it too.
Right.
He was right because Biden, I can't remember what the subject was, used the very same thing. So those would be good examples of us correcting. So the problem is we're not putting the right people in the Congress. And Alexis de Tocqueville, a French philosopher, loved America, and he had some great quotes, but one of them that's very powerful is every citizen is taught the history of this country and the leading features of its Constitution. And it is extremely rare to find a man imperfectly acquainted with all of these things, and a person wholly ignorant of them is sort of a phenomenon. Now, does that describe America today?
It's the complete opposite. Nobody knows what's going on. They're tearing down our monuments and history, and I don't even know.
Our Constitution worked because people did know their Constitution. And the reason it's not working today is they don't. And the John Birch Society does offer a course called Constitution is a Solution. It's a 6-part series. Everybody should watch it. Everybody should get together as a group and get it and know their Constitution. Now, the John Birch Society puts out, or the New American, a publication of the John Birch Society, puts out something called the Freedom Index. And you can access the Freedom Index by going to thefreedomindex.org. But if you look at the Freedom Index, and since I cover Pennsylvania, and I use it a lot, even one time I was talking to Baltimore, and I used Pennsylvania a lot, because I told them in Baltimore, your Freedom Index isn't a great example because one Republican congressman got 100, and all the Democrats got a 0. If you looked at that, you would think it's the Democrats' fault.
Well, I always tell the people when they say, "Well, this guy's garbage," especially down here in the South where we're all red. It's easy to get a higher score when your president is Biden and you got Kamala Harris running around. You're just opposing everything there is. They're like, "How did he get such a high score? Your thing's wrong." I was like, "No, they're just opposing it." You show the true colors when a Republican gets in there and they start going, "Yeah, let's do this. Yeah, let's do that." It almost reminds me of the difference between Trotsky and Stalin. So, Trotsky and Stalin, the argument wasn't over if to redistribute the wealth. The argument was over where to redistribute the wealth. And Trotsky wanted, he was a globalist, and Stalin said, we need to keep the money here in Mother Russia. And so they had it out, and Trotsky fled to Mexico, where he ultimately died. And so that seems to be the difference. It's kind of like you're off track. Where are we going to redistribute the wealth? Over here, Republicans say over here, Democrats say over here. And I'm not saying all of them, this is a generalization, but why don't we just stop redistributing the wealth? I mean, I point that out all the time wherever I go to local meetings, at school board meetings and county council. Some states call it county commissioner. In South Carolina, we call it county council. I say that's redistribution. No, that's not redistribution. That's crony capitalism. I'm like, yeah, it's redistribution of wealth. Is what it is. It's like saying, what's the difference between killing somebody and murder? I mean, somebody's dead. I mean, you whitewash the term. Read the first chapter of the Communist Manifesto. You take from the bourgeoisie and you give it to the proletariat. And it really just gets on my nerves when they go, oh, well, we need to be doing this. No. That's redistribution of wealth. That's communism. No, we shouldn't do it all. Well, we have to do something. No, you don't. But the thing is, the more a legislator does, or the more an elected official does, it takes more money to do that. The less someone does, the less money they spend of yours. And so, guess what? You get to keep more of that in taxes. And it's like, oh my goodness, what? Do you not like keeping the money that you make? I mean, it baffles me.
The more legislation, the more complicated to make. And to add to that point, one of the things I always remember, I can't remember how many years ago, that's when they came up with the hate crime bills. And so I think it was in Texas, there were a couple white guys who dragged around a black man in the back of their pickup until he was dead. It was horrific.
Yeah.
They would do that. So how could you vote against a hate crime after that? But the truth is, does it really matter if there were 2 white guys dragging a black guy around, or 2 black guys dragging a black guy around, or 2 black men driving a white guy around, or 2 white guys driving a white guy? The man was horrifically murdered,
yes,
no matter what the skin color of all the people were. And they should be tried and jailed for that alone, and not the color of their skin, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But it's popular. It's to get the races fighting. But anyway, you get back. You made a great point about when there's a Republican president in. And before we go, let me explain what the Freedom Index is for some people who don't. It comes out twice a year, and we take 10 bills that are very important and high in spending, and we grade the congressmen on their votes on those 10 bills. And if it's unconstitutional, they get a minus. Now, there's something that Larry McDonald, the former chairman of the John Birch Society, said. When looking at a bill, he looks, number one, is it constitutional? Number two, is it a good bill? And number three, can we afford it? So we had a congressman in Pennsylvania, Lloyd Smucker, who was out in a meeting, and someone asked him, what do you do when a bill comes before you? And he said, well, first, I decide if it's a good bill. Wrong answer. Doesn't matter if it's a good bill. We don't live in a democracy. In a democracy, if you think it's a good bill and the majority rules, it's the law.
Yeah.
We live in a republic. We live under the rule of law. So the first thing you do is say, is it constitutional? Now, they called Ron Paul Dr. No because he said he took a bill, put it in front of his legislative assistants and said, find if there's anything unconstitutional in there. And they usually did. He said the first or second page, and then he voted no. Now, if it is constitutional, then you go to number two, as Larry McDonald said. You say, okay, it's constitutional. Now, is it a good bill? Now, even then, if it's a good bill and we can't afford it, can't do it. There's a lot of things in my house I would love, but if I can't afford it, can't do it.
Yep.
So those are the three benchmarks. And I told that to a state legislator recently on a one-on-one meeting. And as we get through the meeting, he goes, what were those three things again? So it's great. So anyway, the Freedom Index is based on that. And I call it the truth serum because you can't hide. Now, I love the Freedom Index in Pennsylvania, unlike Maryland, because it really goes to show, for example, if you look at Pennsylvania on the Freedom Index, Scott Perry gets a 90, this Freedom Index. The previous Freedom Index, he got 100. The Freedom Index before that, he got 100. Yeah. Now, remember at the beginning of this, if you watch the last episode, I said I'm not a conservative, I'm not a Republican, I'm a constitutionalist. Scott Perry is a constitutionalist.
Yeah.
Let's compare that to, if you look at your Freedom Index, number 11, Lloyd Smucker. Lloyd Smucker he's a conservative Republican. He gets a 30.
Golly ball.
30. And if you take a look at Glenn Thompson, number 15, he's a conservative Republican. He gets a 30. And there's other Republicans that get a 30. That means 70% of the time, these conservative Republicans are voting the same as Madeline Dean, the Democrat, who gets a 0, or Scallon, who gets a 0, or Chrissy Houlihan, who's a Democrat, who gets a 0. These conservative Republicans are voting 70% of the time. See, I call the Freedom Index the truth serum because there's nowhere to hide.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, that's right. So, as you said, sometimes when there's a Democrat in, the Republicans score higher because they're just voting against the Democrat. But when the Republicans are in, like you go back to the Bush era and stuff, they're getting like a lot of 40s and things. Now I can't believe that they're getting 30s and they even have a Democrat in office. So it's gotten that bad. So we use these scorecards. Let's get back to what we were talking about, is controlling the House of Representatives. If you take these freedom indexes and get them distributed, you can compare congressman to congressman. And the one in the 1st District in Pennsylvania, Brian Fitzpatrick, who got a 0, and I think a 20. And he said, oh, this scorecard, you're cherry picking. We're not cherry picking. We took 10, and every single congressman in the United States is based on the same 10. So, Brian, you got a 20. Are you saying that Scott Perry, who got a 90, is wrong? So that doesn't work. So we also put something out called congressional scorecards. Now, the scorecards are just based on the individual congressman, and they come out, I think it's 3 times a year. And we take 6 bills and we rate them. Same thing, if it's constitutional or not. and if it's an importance in high spending. And our members, the first thing in my area is as soon as a scorecard comes out, the next chapter meeting, our members send it, mail it to their congressman. That's the first thing. Second thing is if they're out in public, they go to the meeting and they just hand them out. They're not
No,
here.
so which meetings? Like GOP meetings?
GOP meeting, town hall meeting. If a
Uh,
member is out at a town hall meeting, we have a member, chapter leader down by Atlantic City, who did this with state representatives, and just recently, and the conservative Republican woman walked in and he had him handed out, and she was furious and said, "I didn't come here to get attacked." And he calmly and politely said, "We're not attacking you. We just have your voting record, and we wanted to ask you, could you explain these? That's all." And she beat her chest and said, "I'm an attorney." And I told Steve, I might have said to her, "Well, I'm not an attorney. I'm unemployed, and I'm a nobody, but you work for me."
absolutely,
I'm not
absolutely.
unemployed or
I
anything.
mean,
I was just dramatizing.
I had
But
something similar happen to me. I was handing out a state representative scorecard at a GOP meeting, and he shows up, and I'd already handed them all out because I get there early. And he comes up to me and cusses me, I mean, slam out. And I just look at him and I go, "Sir, I didn't vote this way. Why are you mad at me? You voted this way.
yeah,
If you're angry or upset at the way that you voted, why did you vote this way?" And I said, "I think the problem is not you're not upset at the way you voted. You're upset that the people know how you voted. See, darkness loves the shadows. Evil loves to be shrouded in darkness. But when we are the light of the world as we're supposed to be, and we bring that darkness to light and that evil to light, they get upset."
you walked right into what I wanted to say next, and
Oh,
that
I took
is
you. I'm sorry. I took your point from you.
no, actually, it was a great lead in. It wasn't. You didn't take it away. It was a great lead in. So they can't hide from these. These are powerful tools. People go and ask questions. If you have the voting record right in front of them, these are powerful tools. So it, and then it doesn't end there. We have a business chapter that for Brian Fitzpatrick, we raised. I'm not going to say how much because we're on the thing, but we raised a lot of money, and we got 25,000 scorecards distributed in his district.
Nice.
And now we're having a meeting this week, this Saturday, and I'm going to tell the business chapter, okay, we did a great job, but this is not a campaign tool. This is an education tool. That means there was a primary, and it was good we got these out. But if you really want to get him out of office, because he's going to get elected again. Although he had a good challenge because my one chapter leader, he's split between two counties, said he lost the walk-in vote in one county,
Oh, wow.
and he was going against the nobody, constitutionalist. He only won for the mail-in. I don't know about the other two, but I'm going to say to them, you really want to get him out of office. These are education tools. These are not just during the campaign. When he gets back in office, which he probably will, for the next 2 years, we need to raise the money, and every 4 months, these cards need to go out. And the voters will get the card, and then 4 months later, they'll get the card again, and 4 months later, they'll get the card again. And by the time the election comes, in 2 years, not 4 years, not 6 years, like the president or Senate, in 2 years, for the people to control the money and write all the legislation, they're going to be educated. And the ads on TV aren't going to matter. So that's the power of that. Let's segue into let me end by saying that the people we talked about Alexis de Tocqueville, people don't understand our Constitution. So if you look at Madison, Madison says the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Where are they few and defined? Right in the Constitution, on Article 1, Section 8. It's a short list. So I try to give people the quick version, the elevator pitch. So the elevator pitch is, and most people don't understand this, as Alexis de Tocqueville said, we don't understand. The power of the federal government has the power to do nothing. You hear what I said? They have the power to do nothing except what's in Article 1, Section 8. It's a short list. Madison said the power is delegated by the proposed constitution of the federal government are few and defined. Where are they defined? In Article 1, Section 8. Jefferson said Congress has not unlimited powers, but only those specifically enumerated. Enumerated meaning numbered. They're numbered in Article 1. So the federal government, and the people don't understand this, they think we're a democracy. Once the person gets elected, they were elected to do what is best for the country. That's not true. They only have limited powers. So where are those powers left is you need the next line of defense. We said, let's get back to the original thing. What happens if Trump doesn't get in the White House? The next line of defense are the states. And the states, you need to know your state representatives. And in my area, we've had 10 meetings with 10 different state representatives in the past few months. And they were great meetings. And one was a Democrat. And my one chapter leader said, I'm going to say, look, we're here to extend across the aisle and talk to you. And I said, no, you're not. And she's a great chaplain. I said, but I'm teaching her. I said, no, you're not. You're not going to say that. You're a constituent. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. And it doesn't matter if she's a Democrat or Republican. She represents you. We're going in as a constituent. And I said, you're the constituent. I'm not. I'll go to the meeting with you. So we've had members contact their representatives, and I'm there to help go in if they need me. And I went to most of them, but I told the members, next time you'll go yourself. So the state representatives, remember what I said, the federal government has the power to do nothing except what's in Article 1. So who makes that decision? It's not the Supreme Court. See, most people think, the Supreme Court's the law of the land. I stood in front of a Congress, a state representative, and I said to her, the Supreme Court's not the law of the land. She looked at me like your dog looks at you like this sometimes. What was that? So she looks at me, and I said, the states, the 13 countries, because they really were, there were 13 countries, didn't even want to sign this document. And we had to convince them, no, it's not going to be a federal government. Why would these guys who were such guardians of their own sovereignty sign a document and ask the federal government, the Supreme Court, whether the federal government was out of line? That doesn't even make sense. You don't even need to be a constitutional scholar.
Reductio ad absurdum is what that is.
Yeah. There's a saying that Thomas Woods, I got to give him credit, in a documentary called Nullification of Rightful Remedy by the 10th Amendment Center. And he said that would be the equivalent if you and I were in a disagreement and we just couldn't come to a solution, you and I. So we're going to have to get somebody else to help us out. So I'm going to call my mother, and she's going to decide whether you and I are right. So why would the states go to the Supreme Court, the federal government, to ask if the federal government was out of line? No, Alexander Hamilton said that the people are the guardians of the Constitution. So where is that? That's through the states. And Thomas Jefferson said, if a law is unjust, a man is not only right to disobey it, he's obligated to disobey it. So what does that mean? So I said to the state representative in the meetings that we've had over the past few months, I've sat here and explained it to these members, these legislators. And I said, that you took an oath to the Constitution. Yes. Article 6 is in the Constitution. Yes. So you took an oath to that. That's the supremacy clause that says that all laws passed by the federal government, you're obligated to make them the law of the land. But let's read it, because I missed 3 very important words. And it says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof. So if a law is passed by the federal government that's in following the Constitution, you as a state representative are obligated to make it the law of the land. Now, what if it's not in pursuance thereof? Do you go to the Supreme Court? Do you call my mother? No. You say, that's not in pursuance thereof, and we're not doing it. That's, that's not my opinion. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. He said, you're obligated. You're not disobeying the law, I said to the representative. You're enforcing the law. You're enforcing the Constitution by saying to the federal government, that's not one of the few enumerated powers that we gave. So the second line of defense is the states saying absolutely not. There is a bill in Pennsylvania, 2380. It's a very short bill. It says that the UN, the WEF, and the World Health Organization have no jurisdiction in the state of Pennsylvania.
That's good.
That doesn't give the states new power. That just is the 10th Amendment only being specific to the UN, the WEF, and WHO. There's a similar bill in New Jersey, 4453. So you need to look and see if there's a bill in your state to nullify the UN's many organizations. That's one thing to do. Now, there's something that just happened recently, only about 2 or 3 weeks ago, September 22nd, 23rd, that nobody covered except for the New American that I know. There might have been one other group out there or something. And it was called the UN Summit of the Future. So we're going to tie back to the last podcast where we were talking about the UN again. The UN Summit of the Future, every world leader was there in New York City, including Biden. How could every world leader be in New York City and the home of Fox News, ABC News, CBS News, NBC News, MSNBC, I think's up there. They're right across Manhattan, and nobody reported on it. Now, I took journalist class in college, and if I was asked, "Is this a newsworthy event?" Yeah, I think when every leader in the world is meeting in New York, you might want to report on that. Well, Alex Newman was there and reported on it, and they signed something called the Pact of the Future. Now, you need to study it deeper, but I'm going to summarize it. But it basically says the United Nations now has control of the world. Remember that document I said in the last podcast about the world effectively controlled the United Nations? Mm-hmm. Well, 65 years later, or however many years later, they just made it unofficially official. It wasn't passed or anything like that, but they signed it. They signed this Pact for the Future. And in it, they said over 100 times in the Pact for the Future that they were going to push these 17 sustainable goals in the Agenda 2030 program. In fact, it says, we affirm our enduring commitment to the Agenda 2030 sustainable development and sustainable development goals, and we urgently want to accelerate its progress. It says right in the Pact, and you got to go deeper into it. But we have these bills to nullify these things. And Robert Welch said, withdraw the United States from the United Nations, and you've broken the back of the conspirators. And I asked these people, and all these well-intentioned people, these patriot groups and Tea Parties and whatever, because people woken up after 2020. But do you know your backup plan? Do you know your Constitution? Do you even know there's 2 bills out there, one in the House and one in the Senate? By the way, it's the first time they're in both branches. Or is your Tea Party or Patriot Group pushing these 2 bills to get us out of the United Nations? Because like I said, Robert Welch says you do that, you've broken their back. So that is the backup plan. You've got to stop Congress, use the playbook. We got an instruction manual that the founders gave us called the Constitution. And it gives the power to the House of Representatives, start concentrating on the House of Representatives, get our scorecard out, go meet with your state legislator who probably doesn't understand nullification. In fact, we met with one, and while I was talking to him, I told him, at times I've gone in front of 100 people who are at a Patriot Group and say, you know who I blame? And they're ready to say the Democrats or this person or that person or this politician. And I say, with all the love in the world, I blame you. You don't know your Constitution.
Absolutely.
When you do, you can meet, and I said this in front of the state senator. I said, when you do, you can meet with someone like you, I said to him, and we can help educate you, and you'll invite us back, right? He said, yes, you're right. And he said, thank you for meeting with me. That's how it works.
Absolutely.
That's how we take back our government. And, whatever whoever gets in office. But we can't give up because what they have planned for us is pure evil. So I see
Indeed.
someone who's interested in the conversation.
Indeed. Well, that sounds like a good backup plan. And thanks for tuning in to the Gentleman's Review. And if you've benefited from this, please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you. Y'all have a great day.